I've always wondered why we tip taxi drivers, and it's taken me almost 7 years of being in this profession to figure out the actual reason why. So in this video, I'm going to share the most probable reason why people tip taxi drivers, how credit card is changing the game and making you tip even more than ever before, and finally, the biggest tip I've ever received. Little bit of story time. My last ever job before becoming a cabbie was actually working within Starbucks, and the whole notion of a tip just seemed so strange and foreign. And possibly the only time I would ever get a tip would be, say, Christmas Eve, maybe. And even then it might be like a shared tip amongst all the staff within that establishment. So you can imagine my surprise when I got into taxi driving. My friend's dad, who was a taxi driver and effectively my first kind of mentor into the game, told me about this. He was like, look, this nationality, they don't tip so much. This nationality, they tip a little bit more. That kind of thing. And I'm like, what? Literally, for doing my job. And sure enough, once I became a black cab driver, I'd stop the meter, charge the metered amount, and almost miraculously, there'd be extra money on there. It just completely blew my mind because I'd come from a retail shop environment. Customer comes to the front desk with 2 items. £15.98 please, sir. There you go. £4 2p change, sir. And the whole idea of that now in a taxi just seems so foreign to me. Some people say that, oh okay, now that it's gone card, you must be getting less tips than ever. So I decided to call up some of my cab driver colleagues and friends to ask them, has credit card killed tipping?
Let's try through a few fridge freezers, geezers. Who have we got? Let's call Frank.
Hello, Tom.
Hello, sir. You all right? That was a quick answer.
Oh, fantastic. How are you doing?
Loving life, you?
Oh, mate, absolutely. Thanks for making me out to be a job thief.
It's all good, mate. Yeah, you love it. Basically, I just need your thoughts and opinion on, has credit card killed tips?
There's less people tipping, but the people that tip, they are tipping more. So really, I don't think it's actually affected the overall amount that I receive. They tip like a value of the job. Whereas before, they literally just rounded it up.
Yes and no. In the beginning, some credit card machines didn't really give the tip option. I noticed if the journey is like 10, 15, 20 pounds, that sort of money, you're more likely to get a 10% or 15% tip. 8 times out of 10, yeah, I do get a tip.
Hi Tom, it's Dale here. Well, I'd say most people give me a tip, Tom. They get options like 1, 2, 3 and 4. It's all different percentages, yeah? I think that most people press 2 or 3, yeah, and they're really grateful for me driving them to their destination.
No, I don't think credit cards have killed tipping as such. Passengers actually tip more often when using them. However, tips will probably be a percentage of the fare and relatively smaller.
I find with the payment machine I have, which is Taxi World, the rounding up the fare and the tip prompt is pretty good. I do get a tip, I would say about 80% of the time.
Having the credit card systems has kept us getting tips, whereas where cash, people would just round up 5, 10, 15% depending on what they want to do.
Sweet. Awesome, that's all I need, mate. Yeah, that's wicked. It's clear. Even though the majority of our transactions do take place on card, we still get tipped. But specifically, why do London cab drivers get tipped?
At first, I thought I was getting tipped because of how efficient and amazing my knowledge of London was. And supposedly, that goes back to the origins of the word tip, to ensure or ensure promptness. Apparently in the Victorian times, you would tip to sort of, guarantee a better service. But that all began to fall apart when I realised that we could have the worst journey across London and I'd still be tipped. I could have the best journey across London, knowing that I've cut out so much traffic and done it in blazingly quick time, and not receive a tip. I've even had it where I've screwed up, I've let the passenger know of my mistake, I've reduced the fare on the meter and said, really sorry, have it a bit cheaper on me because I know I could have done that a bit better, or I've taken the wrong turn in here, and they still tip. Maybe I had to be super chatty and charismatic cab driver, what everyone thinks of a cab driver. But then I was put at ease when, natural introvert I am, I can have conversations conducted in sheer silence between the passenger and I'd still get tipped. Maybe there's something else at play here. Maybe a clean taxi will yield more tips, but I've had dirty taxis in the past. Not obscenely dirty, but enough that in my mind I'm thinking, oh, maybe should take it to the car wash and get cleaned, and I still get tipped for it. Whatever the variable, it always defied convention. So if I had a clean taxi, I might not get tipped. If I had a dirty taxi, I would get tipped. Maybe it's my dashingly good looks. Maybe if I got a haircut, who knows? Maybe I just looked way too far into this. So I very quickly realised there's zero rhyme or reason as to why I personally get tipped. But what kind of tips are we talking? How big an amount do I get tipped as a taxi driver? Now, before I share that juicy information, I actually share a lot of fun behind the scenes information every single Sunday, and it comes directly to your email inbox with my free Sunday summary. Yes, this is a newsletter that I've been producing for over 3 years now, and I have not missed a single week. You get updated on what's coming from me and this channel before anyone else. I also share lots of things like what's going on in London, gadgets I'm testing out, or maybe really cool books that I just love to share with people. If that is of interest, do hit the link down below. That is my own email newsletter. No one else has influence on that. It's just an extra sneak peek of what I'm working on other than what you see in video format on this channel. Now let's break down some of these tips I've received over the years. Arguably, the best tips come from the smallest jobs. Why? Because they generally have the highest percentages. As an example, if I do a £7 fare and it has a £3 tip on it, that's a 42% tip. That's awesome. I made this video previously about how cab drivers get the most profit, and one of the best ways of doing it is short journeys. Short, quick journeys, hopefully with a tip on it. One of my best examples was I took a gentleman from the Ritz Hotel and we was going to the Lanesborough. Now, very, very easy job. We just leave on Left Arlington Street, left into Piccadilly, go around Hyde Park Corner, left into that beginning part of Knightsbridge, and into the forecourt of the Lanesborough, what was once St George's Hospital. It was about a £7 fare. He hands me a £20 note and he says, "Driver, keep the change." Incredible, because I didn't even really say anything to him on the whole way there. But that was effectively a 185% tip. How mad is that? Can you imagine if every job tipped like that? Super juicy, that one. So if we're talking percentages, that was most certainly going to be the best. Whereas if I'm taking someone to the airport, and let's say it's £80, it's highly unlikely they're going to round it up to £100.
But my biggest loss of tips comes from when I go to the airport and I have to tell the customer I've got to add a £5 drop off or pick up fee on to their fare. And then after that's added, they tend not to want a tip.
Now, whilst we're on the topic of it, it's worth noting just how smart some of these credit card machines are, in that they're designed in such a way to get the maximum tip from a customer. Now, it depends what line of work you are in, and within the taxi, I have multiple options as to which type of card machine I can fit in my taxi, but some of them have a function called smart tipping. Anything under £20, it's going to offer you a pound amount. And of course, anything above that is going to give you a percentage amount, i.e. £15. Would you like to add a £3 tip? Doesn't seem too bad. That's actually a 20% tip. Very nice indeed. So had it presented the percentage options, you'd probably end up tipping far less. And conversely, on the higher fares, representing the tip as a percentage rather than a whole pound amount can seem much more enticing. For instance, if I was to take you out to the airport and let's say it came to £80, well, if I asked you for a £12 tip, that seems incredibly greedy. But reframe it as a percentage, it's actually a 15% tip, and that seems far more favourable than the whole pound amount. So with all my findings and experiences of tipping, what is the actual reason why people tip? Well, I largely believe it to be a trust token. At least in the UK, you generally tip on anything where you get the goods or the services first, you get to enjoy them, you get to yield the benefits of those services, and then you pay. If you go to a restaurant, have a nice sit-down meal, you get to consume it, eat it, have a dessert, whatever, then you pay, then you generally tip, because it's the trust factor. I've given you this meal, you've not had to pay for it, you pay me afterwards. If you went to Nando's, you pay up front. then you get the meal. So it's very unlikely that you're going to tip in Nando's other than just if you're a nice person, right? And the same goes with driving a taxi. I have trusted that passenger and that passenger reciprocated to me. Thank you for trusting me, accepting that I am a nice customer. Here is a tip, a trust token for that.
It's also a sign that you respect the service. Not necessarily this time, but for next time. I think it's ultimately the reason why concierges at hotels get such big tips. It's that familiarity, that connection, that trust, that brand. The guest of the hotel has built up a relationship with that concierge, and they might be back in the future. They want to maintain that relationship. Oh, and of course that's related to my biggest tip that I teased at the beginning of this video. When I used to do private tours, there's obviously so much interaction and connection with a guest, from initial booking to initial contact, when you pick them up, being with them for the whole day and, you know, leaving them to go to lunch and that kind of trust that happens there, till the very end of the day when you depart. You're very likely to get a large tip because of that connection, that relationship that's been built. Because no one knows what the future may hold. That might not be the last time you ever see that person, and as a result, I've had tips up to £100 in that kind of situation. I'll let you have a guess as to which nationality might have left such a generous tip like that.
As this has been a video about how taxi drivers can maximise their earnings through tips, you need to watch this video over here where I share the potential revenue streams that are available to taxi drivers beyond the day-to-day passengers itself. It's a juicy one.